All right. Hello there, ladies, gentlemen, gamers, and fellow League of Legends sunk ship stranded victims. Welcome back. So, Riot very recently released a quick gameplay thoughts addressing the mythic items, and everyone else is making videos on it, so I thought I'd join the bandwagon. But to be different than everyone else, instead of doing it in as little time as possible, I thought let's do it in the most amount of time possible because that's what everyone wants to see. So we're gonna do a deep dive into the mythic, item system and see what Riot has to say because they are removing it. So I'm curious to see what they're gonna say about it. Kind of if they're gonna admit what I usually say they admit, which is, oh, we definitely think we explored some options. We did really good. We learned a lot of things, but ultimately, it wasn't that good. But we definitely did good. Like they always like to play both sides of the fence. I don't blame them. You can't come out saying, "Hey, we're stupid. We don't know how to patch our game, right? We don't know how to balance," because then people are gonna be wondering, "Well, why are you making money?" But yeah, I'm very curious to see what they're gonna say, and I'm really hoping to get some hints at what's gonna happen to ADC, being an ADC main. Or, if you watch my stream at Twitch TV/Tecnics channel, you would think I don't even play ADC anymore. That's because the role's so unfun. But unfortunately, I'm an ADC main, even though now I play top and jungle more, because the last two champion releases have been for top and jungle, and the champions have actually been kind of fun, even though Briar sucks cock. But anyway, without further ado, let's see what's going on here. So I know it's kind of long, but we're going to go through it, hopefully in a decent amount of time, where I'm not trying to make this long just to go against everyone else's short content. It's just how I react. So strap in, hopefully get some food if you have it, and enjoy the show. So let's see what they're doing. As mentioned in the recent dev update, we're going to be removing the mythic item class come season 2024. Thank the fucking Lord. Before this current mid-season nonsense, I was indifferent about the mythic items. I was like, whatever. There's obviously a best one for the champion, or in Jin's case, there's kind of one you just have to go because all the other ones kind of suck. But once this mid update happened, and I keep saying this to the high heavens, it ruined ADC because it made one of the core items of almost every ADC a mythic, and the other core items that they used to use as mythics stayed mythics. So now you had to make a choice. Do you want to do more damage, or do you want to have utility or survivability? Which, my opinion is your ADC, you're meant to do damage. Other people didn't think so, and I think that ruined the role even further and further put it into the dirt, where now the bot lane is filled, and for a while it's been like this, filled with nonsense mages, assassins, fighters, whoever the fuck you want down there, let's be honest. So, let's see what else is happening. Before that happens, I wanted to take some time to chat with you about why we're removing mythics and what that will mean for League. So the author here is Riot Froxon. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Anyway, mythics and subclass support. While the mythic item system works reasonably well for some classes like assassins, which is ironic because assassins have been kind of cast off the face of the earth for the past amount of time that I've really been here. I feel like in the current season, and maybe a little bit done some, I feel like assassins really haven't done shit. I feel like they're so weak. But anyway, for other classes with more divergent needs, it's been difficult to satisfy all the users across each of the subclasses. That's true. As an example, fighters have had many different subclasses: divers, juggernauts, skirmishers, etc. I was not aware of these, but I still agree there are people that fit those names, I think. So trying to fulfill the needs of all those different champions with only 4 items has proven to be extremely difficult. This is where they kind of quartered themselves into a box. So they can add more mythics, but at that point, it's going to become number one a creativity nightmare. How are you going to make a mythic that satisfies a broad number of people? You can't make one mythic for one person, however much it seems like it's made for them. Triforce Jacks. I'm trying to think what other mythic really synergizes well with the champion. I can't think of it off the top of my head. Maybe like Gore Drinker and someone else, because Gore Drinker was OP recently. But the more items they add, the more of a headache it becomes, not only for them to create it to satisfy a certain subset of champions, but also from a balancing perspective, because we all know Riot, whatever they release, the players are going to take it and they're going to mishandle it into something else. I'm already seeing videos on my feed of support Briar, and I don't like that. The Briar's already shit. And to bring in the bot lane, oh good lord. But anyway, I agree with them here, but that's kind of their fault. While theoretically we could solve the mythic needs of these champions by creating 10 mythics split across each of the subclasses of fighter, every item we add to the mythic pool adds an additional item's worth of complexity to the game. That's what I basically said. This is a maximum number of items that League can have before it gets too complicated. That's very true. And ironically enough, one of the biggest things that's holding League back, which, it's crazy to think that because League is one of the most popular games in the world, it's how hard it is to get into if you're a beginner. Now, over time, League has gotten way, way easier, especially jungle. Now they hold your hand through the jungle compared to what it used to be. Compared to what it used to be like you were going to war in the trenches. Now it's like you're skipping through fucking La La Fairyland with your hand held by Riot. Like they tell you what to build, what to do, timers, everything. Back in my day, you had to look up what to build, right? Even though it's pretty obvious you build a jungle item, you had to figure out where to path, and you had to remember the timers to where, like, you didn't know what jungle camp was up next if you forgot the timer. You were kind of just running around with your fucking head cut off like a chicken. It was actually really skilled and got less skilled over time. But, better for beginners. So, I think still, even though League has taken great leaps and strides to be better for beginners, I think that just the amount of information you need to know at the forefront to even start playing the game. Like, if you go into the game, you need to know what the enemy champions are doing. If you don't know, you're going to get fucked. So already you kind of need to have a baseline of what every champion does. And when you have over 160 champions, you can see how that's already a little not enticing. Plus all the items, plus the objectives, plus macro and micro, mechanic. Like, it's so much. It's so much. So I don't disagree with them here, but again, like I said, they put themselves in this box. They've cornered themselves. Anyway, for every mythic item we add, a slot is taken up, and there's one less in the legendary item pool. Yeah, I guess. Going into mythic items, we knew that adding them would mean less itemization options for item slots 2 to 5. That's true. We did increase the total item pool to compensate for this since we knew that legendary space would be more pinched, but it still wasn't enough. We initially thought that the excitement mythics were bringing as a new tier of item would overcome this, but it didn't. But while 50% of champions were satisfied with their mythic items, the other 50% were left feeling like they didn't have items that felt right for them. Jin. To fully satisfy the needs of all champions, we would need to add 30% more items and the complexity associated with each to the item system, which we don't want to do as it will make leagues significantly harder to learn, which I agree with them, but it kind of sounds like they're complaining about being game developers. Like, oh no, we have to actually make content. But it's not that. It honestly is it's going to add too much into the game where there's a lot already. Like, already those stupid mythics they added before, the Radiant Dawn or the Radiant Virtue, whatever the fuck, where you ult and you restore health to those around you. I feel like only like 3 people use that item. No one uses that fucking item. But anyway, and don't even get me started about mages. But anyway, mythic goals and design debt. Oh boy, finances. We started out with mythic items that were intended to be high excitement with unique outputs, similar to getting really awesome unique items in MMOs and ARPGs. That's interesting. Dashes like Stridebreaker, Prowlers, Gale Force, all of which, or not all of which, Gale Force got fucking nerfed into the ground. Prowlers got changed, so it's not even a dash anymore. And Stridebreaker kind of was the one that always kind of sucked and needed buffs. So all of these, I think, didn't land where Riot was happy with them already. Big heals and hard CC were previously few and far between. For example, a Fiddlesticks or Morgana feels like their gameplay gets transformed for the better when they complete Zanya's Hourglass. This is where it has to do with synergy. It feels so good to complete it because it synergizes so well, it helps you do what you want to do. It's actually a power fantasy there. And we were interested in exploring a version of League that had more kit warping effects that augment and champion fantasies. Yeah, I don't know how a dash, other than with certain people, would really feel like a fantasy. Like, okay, I'm Jin. I guess I'll get this dash one because I'm so immobile and nothing else makes fucking sense. Unless you have now, which now it's IE. Now you can actually make more of an argument than you could before with the old system, the old new mythic system, on building a different mythic for Jin. But before, you would never get anything else. You could get Kraken if you want to be crazy, and Kraken wasn't actually all that bad, believe it or not, as the Jin expert here. But, if you were not trolling, you were going fucking Gale Force. Like, come on. But anyway, I definitely agree with what they're saying here, though. While we were able to balance champions around having mythic outputs, aka balancing Aphelios around Gale Force, which is funny, It adds a bit too much design debt when it comes to designing new champions, e.g., or example, all ADCs need to be designed around getting a dash. See, maybe that explains a reason, one of them, why ADCs suck so much. It's because of Gale Force, which is just, Riot doesn't know how to balance their fucking game. Fucking bullshit. Anyway, so yeah, when they need to design items or champions around items, that's a very, very bad sign, and it's a limiting sign too. Like, oh my god. What if they don't build it? Because people like me, I didn't build Gale Force on Aphelios, I built Kraken. I don't want to talk about the new mythic item system, because fuck that shit. The new ADC items. Anyway, but yeah, this is really, really bad. So what are they doing? Another issue with mythic items is that due to the need to satisfy many different users with a limited number of mythic items, each item tended to be quite complicated, as we often needed to have multiple mechanics or stats on certain items so that they be satisfying across many different champions and classes. So apparently Stridebreaker needed 4 stats. This is why I actually don't know if this is true. I don't feel like this is true, because look at Gale Force. I mean, yeah, it gave slight movement speed. Yeah, you did have the stat on there, but did it really matter? This is where I always say in my patch note videos on youtube.com/Tecnics that move speed is a hidden sleeper gem OP buff, but the one, or I guess the amount that Gale Force would give you would kind of be negligible. Or maybe it's because it's on ADCs and they get one shot anyway. They don't have time to run. But anyway, yeah, I don't know if I agree with this one. Prior to Mythics, items were much simpler across the board, which is something we'd like to get back to. That is pretty true. Back in the day, the items didn't have paragraph-long passives. The above issues have led us to the decision to remove mythic items as a concept and bring those items down to a legendary tier. Okay, cool. This is where I'm a little scared, though. This is where I don't want Riot to become boring, and I'm pretty sure they won't, because they always find a way to add something ridiculous into the game. Not always good, like Briar, but sometimes good, like Aphelios. I would rather have something like Aphelios added in than Briar, and I just made a video about it too on youtube.com/Tecnics, which you should be watching this on, where it's always better for a champion to come out extremely strong than extremely weak, which is the cases for Aphelios and Briar. Aphelios came out, everyone memed on Riot, and it's still remembered to this day, but that's because of Riot's response. That's because they didn't just take the L. Briar, absolute opposite, dog shit, terrible. I still love her. She's getting buffed, but not a good look at first, not a good feeling, even though she is pretty unique too. But anyway, I really hope, according to the items, if they're lowering everything to legendary and legendary means less creativity, I really hope the items don't suffer in terms of like gameplay and what they could kind of push the boundaries with. I do feel like some of the mythics were pretty good, even though I think they were kind of broad. I don't think they were really niche, but I would hate to see the items get simpler. Now, granted, I don't want actives coming back. I don't like actives personally. We can have some in the game, but not back in the day, when you had to time the jungle camps. You used to have like 4 fucking actives. I hated that shit. When they took that shit away, I was like, thank God they're making it easier for all of us. But yeah, I really hope the items don't get boring or non-creative. But I don't think they will, but that's a concern I have. Champion power budgets and items. Balancing a champion's total power budget is done by considering their kit, items, summoner spells, runes, etc. This is where, like I said before, a lot of stuff culminates into League. It's the items, the macro, the micro, the meta, what's good, what's bad, the champion's kit, what summoners they're taking. There's so many things you can mix and match that, again, it's a big nightmare balancing some of these things. Because let's just say Ghost is really good on Hecarim, and then you want to nerf Ghost, but that means Hecarim's going to be shit. But if you nerf Ghost, other people are going to be shit too. What do? Do you nerf Hecarim? Do you nerf Ghost? It's a hard call. Probably just nerf both in Riot size. But anyway, what are we saying? Okay, this innately means that if an item takes up a significant portion of this power budget, the other aspects like abilities need to take up a smaller amount. This is where I don't necessarily agree, but this is again where Riot's kind of putting themselves in a corner here. Because there's so many champions, there's 160. Literally, what ends up happening is I think new age champions should not have a power budget. I think they should be unlimited in their power and they should fill a niche. That's easier said than done. But this comes into a problem with the older design champions. The older design champions are very simple. They literally just can't compete. As the meme goes, everyone has a dash nowadays. But basically, the main way to fix this is bring older champions more up to date, give them kit updates. But this is Riot we're talking about, and the Skarner update still isn't out, and it's not coming out for the rest of the year until next year, so good luck with that. We can't live in fairyland, we have to live in reality. So I guess there has to be a power budget to kind of keep old champions a little bit relevant. But again, when you keep adding in champs and there's 160, you kind of run out of niches with even though the game's really complicated. But let's see. Let's keep going. After observing the past few years, we think even unique item effects in the legendary item systems are overriding champions gameplay too much, and we would like to reduce it by some amount. So I feel like this actively contradicts what they were saying before. Because look at the item they used before as the example. Zanya's. Zanya's made Morgan Fiddle feel really good, and they want to give that to everyone. Now, granted, they might admit that that was a mistake, even though it's a really good gameplay thing for the players. They can't add that to everyone, obviously, but at this point, they're kind of going against that, where they're going into what I said before. I feel like the items are going to get very much more boring. Or maybe not boring, maybe they're just going to have less stats, but just be unique with like one passive or something, or one active. Hopefully that's the case, but let's see. This will allow more of the champion's unique gameplay to shine, rather than being a champion delivery system for upfront burst damage procs as an example. Interesting. Item stacking considerations. Having only one mythic item has had a notable benefit for game balancing. Yeah, it's probably been fucking easier. This is because we can make items strong and satisfying without fear of them being stacked. This is where they kind of just front loaded one item. But after seeing this in practice, we don't think this benefit alone justifies all the costs that we're paying for when it comes to the game complexity and satisfying all champions with a mythic item. This is where, when it works for someone, it feels good. When it doesn't, it feels like shit. Jin. As a result, we intend to reduce the power of items that were previously mythic when converting them to legendary. I mean, that's fair. If you're going to reduce them down to legendary, you got to move them down, rather than bring the power of legendaries up to where mythics are today. So this is where I personally would try and bring them up, but that's a lot more work than I think, a AAA gaming studio is going to do, sadly enough. It's ironic because Baldur's Gate really set, like, they almost set a new standard, but I think the game industry is too resilient at this point. But anyway, yeah, I think it's always bad when you're knocking things down a peg and not raising things up. And this is where, if they raise things up, the argument could have been, oh, things will get too crazy, similar to how we had it with the healing. Because there was a time in League where the healing was just fucking ridiculous. But now, I would say, it's kind of toned down to almost nothing. So, it's a bit of a give and take. This is where my general approach to balancing, if I was to have a gun pointed at my head, would be like, okay, have things be in season. Have it be like Fortnite. Fortnite never fails. Have it be like, okay, this thing's gonna be strong this season. Next season it might be something else, but eventually we'll switch it out. We'll switch it out fairly often. Not everything needs to be good at one time. Not every champion needs to be viable at one time, especially with 160. It's literally impossible. At least I think so. Excuse me. Similar to what Overwatch 2 tried to do with their PvE mode. Create an endlessly replayable PvE mode. Yeah, right. Anyway, so let's see what they're doing. This means that some of the more kit warping items like Gale Force will be removed. You see, they say kit warping items, but Gale Force is so simple. It's just the dash. So if that's the level of kit warping they're saying, they should remove Zanya's by this extension. Zanya's is kit warping because it's an invulnerability on any champion. Like, are you serious? They should remove GA. It's a res for any champion. You're giving someone Aatrox's old fucking, like, ult or passive, depending on which iteration. But let's see. Some legacy exceptions like Zanya's Hourglass, of fucking course, that were present in the old system will stay because we need. So some are good, some are bad. This is where it's honestly favoritism, and you could argue maybe a dash is stronger than Zanya's. I feel like a dash is better for all players all around. Which, if Riot wants to make the game easy, keep the dash in. Zanya's is actually for skilled people, which is why I hate it. Not because I'm not skilled, because I'm too skilled. But yeah, this is so stupid. Anyway, as we move to a world where most items will be stackable again, we will need to reduce the power levels of items generally. So does this mean they're not only nerfing mythics, they're nerfing legendaries too? Huh? So that so that stacking them doesn't become too powerful. Well, you can't necessarily stack them unless you want the stats, but the stats aren't really the drawing point of most of these items, legendaries included. The main drawing point of the legendaries is their passive or their active. I don't think you're going to be double stacking Zanya's for the armor, even though it wouldn't be a bad idea, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, no, what the fuck? So this is going to feel like so shit. This is where I'm scared. And I believe I said in the beginning where I really hope they don't fuck the item system up. where Riot has been fucking up things a lot recently. And this item system, mythic removal is kind of a new slate for them, or it's kind of like, hey, we're going back to something that was good, but it seems like it's going to be worse. The main thing I can compare this to is honestly Static Shiv. Static Shiv back in the day was a hardcore ADC item, and it used to crit. Yeah, it did magic damage, but it crit. Nowadays, Static came back in, they changed it up. It's not for ADCs. They had some weird reason of like, oh, we want it to be good on like people who build mixed AP damage. Who the fuck does that? Kaisa? Who else? Not fucking Cog. So I don't know what they're saying with this bullshit, but they brought it back, and then it was fucking worse. And mages used it. It was the ADC item Static Shiv. I literally saw it yesterday. Was used on LeBlanc more than it's used on ADCs. That item fucking sucks. And mid laners abused it, and it got nerfed for ADCs. What do you know? Surprise, surprise. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. This doesn't feel good. I'm not too excited for this. I'm a little scared now. Anyway, the future of items. Elegant design that is still satisfying is the holy grail that we aspire for. Simple items with a clear purpose reduce the barrier of entry for learning in League and reduce the unnecessary complexity in making choices between competing itemization options. Yeah, but this runs the risk of the game getting very boring and very copy and paste build. This is where if the item is very simple, you're going to have the same build on certain champions patch by patch. There's not going to be much variety, let's say. Or at least that's my idea. Having a single unique item that creates balanced choices across users is satisfying and makes good use of an item slot is incredibly difficult to achieve in actuality. I agree with them there. I can point out the problems all day. I can barely provide solutions. Excuse me. So this is where they do get a little bit of a pass here. Where possible, we would like to reduce the item complexity to have one clear unique effect and a maximum of 3 stats. I think that's fair. We also want items to have at least 5-ish users, but with as a diverse champion roster as we have in League, we know we will need to make an exception in some places. But when they say at least 5-ish users, I think this shouldn't be hard because even though League has like niche champions, I feel like there's enough overlap to where if you introduce an item, unless it's specifically made for like one person, like I'm trying to think, maybe like Rammus, right? Rammus or anyone who builds Thornmail. Oh, any damage reflected. Like imagine this is legendary. Any damage reflected is doubled. Who the fuck would that be good on besides Rammus and anyone who builds T-Mail? Like no one. Obviously at that point that's only gonna have 5 users, maybe maximum, but that would be a stupid item in general. But anyway. Where were we? The number of items and their complexity is commonly cited as a barrier to playing League. I think that's part of it for sure. And we aim to simplify items by a meaningful amount while still trying to keep things as they are, or the things players like, which I guess means Zanya's but not Gale Force. Another thing they're fucking ADCs with, of course. This will make some individual items less exciting across the board, which is literally what I said before, but will ultimately mean that individual champions' kits and their differences will shine more. Players will have more flexibility to craft builds, and items will feel like they fit champions better. Well, if the items feel like they fit champions better, they're going to be more niche for those certain champions, which means maybe they're not going to be fitting 5-ish champion limit, or minimum. This is interesting. This is very interesting, because I feel like they're saying stuff that kind of contradicts what they're saying here and there, but they're trying to find the middle ground. And again, what they're trying to do is very hard. I'm not going to take that away, but this is definitely going to be really, really difficult, and I really hope they do it well. Already, I'm not having a good feeling about this, and I'm especially fearful for ADCs. They're taking out Gale Force. I'm really curious to what else they're going to take out. But let's see what this last sentence is. So, while long term, we're still interested in the concept of an additional item tier. Oh shit. Ornn does it well, for example. Yeah, because Ornn's is very simple. Ornn does nothing except increase the stats. Like, Ornn is the simplest thing ever. The hardest thing they have to do with Ornn is think of a cool name for the upgraded item, which honestly they've done pretty well so far. We know mythic items as they currently are is not the right execution of that concept. Yeah, and it took them how long to realize this? Okay, that's the whole article. So, I guess to sum it up, if I can try and organize my thoughts here, it seems like Riot is basically going to make items worse. That's basically what they're saying. They're saying, oh, mythics were too restrictive to too many people. Only half of the people really got a benefit off of them. This is where I don't agree that, they were intended for high excitement. Yeah, there's high excitement with what, a simple fucking dash? Like, are you serious? Are you kidding me? And they're taking that away again, fucking ADCs. But overall, it sounds like they're gonna make more niche items, but items that are less stat sticky, less stat items, more passives. Hopefully, I think that's honestly a better route if they go that route. But if they just reduce it and don't make like more unique passives with items, I think this is gonna be rough, especially for ADCs. But yeah, I'm a little scared. When I first heard it, I was excited, but I'm a little scared because again, Riot recently, they haven't been nice boys. They haven't been nice to us. But that's basically going to be it for the deep dive. If you agree with anything I said or disagree, or what your thoughts are on the system, please let me know in the comments below. I don't get many, so I look at them all. And this is a giant advertisement for my Twitch channel, Twitch TV Tecnics channel. Please come over there and watch me. And yeah, that's gonna be it. Hope everyone enjoyed.